Hey, welcome. If you're getting ready to take your EPA 608 certification exam, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to do a quick, focused run-through of the course section just to make sure you're feeling confident and ready to go on test day.
Okay, let's just jump right in. Here's our game plan. First, we're going to cover why this stuff even matters. Then we'll get into the actual rules of the game. After that, we'll break down the different kinds of refrigerants, cover the 3 R's you gotta know, and wrap it all up with the absolute must-knows on safety.
So, first up, why this test matters. Look, if you can just get a handle on the why behind all this, I promise you all the other rules and regulations are going to make so much more sense. It's the foundation for everything. And it all begins right here, with the stratospheric ozone layer. You can think of it like the planet's own natural pair of sunglasses. It's this shield way up there that blocks out the sun's worst UV radiation. The whole reason we have these certifications is to protect that shield. This right here, this gets to the heart of it. The science is crystal clear. Chlorine is the bad guy when it comes to the ozone layer. The folks over at the ES Institute really nail it when they say, chlorine is the culprit. Simple as that.
And this is where it gets kind of crazy. A single chlorine atom, just one, doesn't just knock out one ozone molecule. No, it starts this massive chain reaction, taking out up to 100,000 ozone molecules. And get this, that one atom can keep doing damage for over a century. That is a ton of destruction from something so small.
But, it's not just about the ozone anymore. We also have to think about something called global warming potential, or GWP. It's just a way of measuring how much heat a gas traps compared to good old carbon dioxide. We set CO2 as the baseline at 1, and you're going to see that some refrigerants have GWPs in the thousands, which is not good.
Okay, so that brings us to Section 2, the rules of the game. This is the stuff you absolutely positively have to know for the exam. These are the key regulations and dates.
All right, I need you to burn these 3 dates into your brain. 1987, the Montreal Protocol. This was a huge deal where countries all over the world agreed to get rid of ozone-depleting stuff. Then, here in the US, 1995 was the end for new CFCs like R12. And, more recently, 2020 was the big phase-out date for making new HCFCs like the famous R22. So, why do you have to get certified? Well, it's the law. It's right here in the Clean Air Act, Section 608. If you work on or even dispose of an appliance with this kind of refrigerant, you have to be certified, period, no exceptions. And you can't just work under somebody else's certification either. It has to be yours.
And here it is, the golden rule, the #1 thing you never ever do. It is illegal to knowingly vent these refrigerants. Now, that tiny little hiss of gas when you hook up your gauges, that's what's called a de minimis release. It's unavoidable. But intentionally opening a valve and letting refrigerant just pour out, that's a huge violation with serious penalties.
All right, let's move on to Section 3, Know Your Refrigerants. We're going to break down the different refrigerant families you'll see out there and check out how they stack up when it comes to hurting the environment.
This table is pretty much your cheat sheet for refrigerants. Up top, we've got the old CFCs like R12. They've got chlorine, so they have a high ozone depletion potential and a crazy high GWP. Then came the HCFCs, like R22, a little better on the ozone front, but still a pretty high GWP. Then we moved to HFCs, like R410A. Great news, no chlorine, so 0 ozone damage. But look at that GWP, still really high. And that brings us to the new kids on the block, the HFOs and HCs. 0 ozone depletion, and a super low GWP. You can really see the whole story of the industry right here.
Okay, now for the hands-on stuff. Section 4, the technician's 3 R's. This is what you're actually going to be doing with refrigerant when you're on the job. This is where the rules become real.
You absolutely have to know the difference between these 3 words. They are not the same thing. First, recover. That's just getting the refrigerant out of a machine and into a tank. That's it. Simple. Second, recycle. This is when you clean it up a little bit, maybe run it through a filter dryer so you can put it back into the same customer's equipment. But reclaim. That's the big one. That's taking used refrigerant and processing it so it's as pure as brand new stuff. That has to be done at a special facility, and they have to do a chemical analysis to prove it.
So when it's time to recover refrigerant, you've got 2 basic ways to do it. First is system-dependent or passive recovery. That's where you use the machine's own compressor to push the refrigerant out.
It only works for small appliances with 15 pounds or less. For anything bigger, you have to use a self-contained or active recovery machine. That machine has its own compressor to pull the refrigerant out.
Okay, we're on the home stretch. Let's finish with what is absolutely the most important part. Section 5, Safety and Cylinder Handling. These are the things you can't compromise on. Ever. Getting this right keeps you safe.
Remember this number, 80%. You will see this on the exam. You never, ever fill a recovery cylinder more than 80% full by weight. And why is that? Well, liquid refrigerant expands when it gets warm. A lot. That empty 20% at the top is called the vapor space, and it's what keeps the tank from building up so much pressure that it explodes.
And you've got to know your tanks. Recovery cylinders are gray with a yellow top. They're built tough, they're reusable, and they need to be safety tested every 5 years. Now those disposable jugs you buy new refrigerant in, you can never use them for recovery. They aren't built for it. Once they're empty, you have to pull the rest of the vapor out down to 0 pressure before you can scrap them.
This might sound basic, but it's critical. Your minimum PPE, your personal protective equipment, is always safety glasses, because liquid refrigerant can freeze your eyeball instantly, and protective gloves, like the butyl-lined kind. And of course, always make sure you're working in a well-ventilated area.
And here is a life or death rule. I'm not exaggerating. You never use oxygen or compressed air to pressure test a system for leaks. When oxygen mixes with refrigerant oil under pressure, it can literally create a bomb. It's a violent explosion. You always use dry nitrogen, and you always use a pressure regulator.
So, as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with this question to think about. This whole thing isn't just about passing a test to get a card for your wallet. It's about being a professional. So now that you know the rules, and more importantly, the reasons behind the rules, how are you going to use that knowledge every single day to protect yourself, your customers, and all of our environment?